recording. Okay, which I forgot to do. We are recording this evening, and let me just once again welcome you to our first homeschooling summit. And it is Caribbean. We do have people on here from different Caribbean islands, and we are very, very thrilled that you have joined us. We're going to ask you to keep sharing the link. Now, just let me say that I have homeschooled. I have 3 children, 3 boys, Dan Jamal Makari and Josh Dale Weeks. And I homeschooled the first 2, a total of 10 years. So Dan went to school when he was 6, Makari when he was 4 years old. At that time, I lived in the US. And so when I came to Barbados, I decided that, and my husband, you know, he's Barbadian and he tells me about the great education system and so on. So I decided to homeschool my children. And, you know, the experience has been interesting. Interesting experience. Not that, you know, I'm saying that the Barbadian educational system is the worst in the world, but I believe that there were lots of gaps. And, you know, I recognize that in order for my children to go to a good school, which I was told when I got here, the boys need to go to a good school, then, you know, I needed to get lessons, even though they were going to school, regular school every day. They needed to get lessons. When they got to secondary school, they came and said, Mommy, in order for me to do well and to get the ones that we tell them to run after, I need lessons. But yet still I was sending them to school every day. So sometimes I really wonder about that. And, you know, recently parents have been contacting me about asking for information about homeschooling because they heard me talk about it on my program. And that is basically because of our current situation, what is happening, not just in Barbados, but around the world in terms of the COVID situation, the COVID infection, COVID-19, as it relates to the protocols. Some children, when they had a physical, you know, school, they couldn't wear the mask the entire day. We have those situations. We have people who are just scared, their children, you know, scared if they should get infected because they have asthma, they have all kinds of different ailments. And then there are also those who are just, you know, they're not anti-vaccine, but they have concerns about this particular vaccine, and they don't want their, you know, to be in that situation. So yes, there are those who are concerned about the educational system on a whole and are not very happy with it. And then there are those who are concerned about this present situation that we are in. I myself am not anti-vaccine at all. All my children have been vaccinated. However, I believe I can understand the parents' concern in this type of setting, and it would be their right to determine, you know, exactly what they want to do with their children. The last thing I want to talk about is us as parents, you know, acknowledging that when we have the opportunity and that gift, you know, of rearing a child, I've been blessed with children. Children, they're not burdens. They're not a burden to us. You know, we have an opportunity. It's a blessing to be able to guide them and to lead them and to also teach them. I remember when I was at university in the US and I was finished studying, and I had my son and I was contemplating. I said, oh my God, I don't want to leave him with a sitter, and I don't want, you know, and then I wasn't sure about the US public system, public school system. And a professor said to me, I think it was my math professor, he said to me, what if you got your degree just to teach your children? And I was like, you must be mad. getting a degree to teach my children. I need to go out and, you know, go out and get a job and do like what my other friends are doing. I don't want to be home teaching my children. I don't get a degree to teach my children, you know. But over the years, I mean, I ended up, that's what I did, because I recognize how important the gift of a child is, and the blessing of having this child. And I just didn't want to, you know, just put him out there to the wolves, especially there in New York. So my situation, based on my situation, I made a decision to homeschool them, and I would not regret it. When they came here and went to school here, they were reading way above their years. And most of you will hear a lot of these testimonials, and my children have done very well academically. So that is just my my experience. And tonight you're going to hear from Rasimba, who has been been involved in homeschooling for many years. You're going to also hear from Mrs. Jana O'Donnell, and you're going to hear from Kamau, Reverend Kamau from Trinidad, and Lisa from Barbados. All right. So first up, we're going to, let me just, give me a little time to find my speakers so I can tag them. And as I do that, again, I'm going to ask you to share the link with as many persons as possible. Okay. Share the link with as many persons as possible. And as you're doing that, I am seeking to find my speakers so that I can pin them. And I'm not seeing why I'm not able to do that right now. And I think this is where I need my husband to help me a bit. But first up, I'm going to ask Rasimba. Rasimba, can you just turn on your microphone?
Greetings. It should be on. You hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Definitely hearing you. And yes, and I'm trying to remember what I need to do to pin you. I pin Adrian Green, and I know Adrian is here. I know Jana is here. And I'm just waiting to see the others, and so that we can get good. So Rasimba is here, and I will just add him. So very good. So we're going good so far. And Jana O'Donnell is also here. I'm seeing her here. And we're going to get her pinned as well. And okay, so it's not giving me that option to pin Jana. Okay, good, great, good. So I think my speakers, if you could turn on your camera. Lisa, is that Lisa Gill? Lisa is here. Oh, wonderful, Lisa. Okay, now it's happening. Good, so we're in business. Welcome everybody who's joined. This is our Caribbean Homeschooling Summit. All right, and I'm looking for Reverend Kamau. I know he's here. I saw him earlier. Can you turn on your camera, Reverend Kamau? I saw him earlier. Okay, I'm not seeing him just yet, but I'm sure he'll be here. I saw him come in at some point, probably just had a little difficulty, you know, with these technical, you know, things. I'm not the most technical, so I know how that can be. Well, let me just go straight to Rasimba, and I'm going to ask him to make his 15 minutes presentation. And he is going to talk to us about the rudiments of homeschooling, how, and give us some other tips. Can you tell us also, Rasimba, how many years you have been homeschooling?
Give thanks, Marcia. Once again, it is good to be on your show. You know, good night, everyone. I hope everyone is hearing me well. If you're not, please say. You know, I have a tendency to speak softly.
Can hear you.
I have been Well, let me start by saying I am the founder and president of a charity called the African Heritage Foundation. About, let's say, about 5 or 6 years ago, we were involved in a case where a Rastafari family had been charged for not sending to school their children. These children had never been to school. We got involved. The long and short of it is that due to that, we ended up doing a lot of research into homeschooling. Um, so we could represent this family. We went to court with it, and we went against the Ministry of Education and also the welfare department, and we won both cases. From there, the interest, a wider interest in homeschooling started to develop because homeschooling was always going on, but it seemed that only one um, set of the society was homeschooling or was even allowed to homeschool. Uh, so when the basically poor people, including masters, decided that they wanted to take up homeschooling, it became a problem. Anyhow, we won those cases and we started to go into homeschooling. So what the organization has been doing since then, we've been assisting parents who would like to homeschool. We tell them a little bit about homeschooling for our time in doing the research and such. And then we offer tutorials and we offer tutoring. Sometimes we go to persons' houses or sometimes they would come to what we have created. This was pre-COVID, would be the community home school, where a number of youth would come to the school, to one particular space, which would have been in that time my organization's headquarters. And then members and older youth in the community would come across. So it was a blend within the homeschooling. So let me start by taking you through the process of application, because that's the first thing you have to do. I heard um the lady say on the video there, in each territory, each island, each country, the process of applying to homeschool is a little different. In Barbados, what is needed that you go to the Ministry of Education and there's a form that you pick up. And on this form, it will ask you for a number of things. One is a letter to the Ministry of Education, the homeschool department. It used to be to the Chief Educational Officer. Um, and it just basically states your reason for wanting to homeschool. Then you have to get the curricula for the particular year level or the class level of the child. So if it's a class 4, you will get the class 4 curriculum, and we provide that as well. You have to do a timetable, because the ministry has not really, in our opinion, has not really researched and really looked into homeschooling. What they have done is that they try to sort of take the traditional classroom setting and try to impose it in your home. So they look for a space that is basically your child's class in your house, where they would have their desk, and whatever um, tools, books, they would be using. Um, and then within the form now, there is a part that asks for qualifications. The qualifications really any sort of certification that is CXC level or over, really allows you within their eyes, to be seen as to be having the ability to teach your child. Then you submit that, and they will call you for an interview. You go through the interview, and basically it is your right, your legal right to homeschool your child. So they really can't tell you no. What they're really doing is trying to make sure that you're not just keeping home your child, and your child is not doing anything. Because under law, there's a responsibility that, the children must be educated. So that is the basic process on how you make application to the ministry to homeschool and what my organization assists parents in doing. The homeschooling it is basically what you're doing as a parent is directing the education of your child. So how you set your curriculum, you have a base curriculum. So like what we would do, I would take myself as an example because I presently teach in our homeschool system. So what I would do um, would be in sitting down with the parents, I would find out what the child would like, what they like, sorry. And I try to incorporate that into the lessons, especially for the younger children. So, um, the colors, say it's a little boy and they like cars, I would use cars to teach math. I can use cars to teach English, within art, different aspects. So a lot of it has to do with creativity. So you can mix and blend your subjects, you know, um, English with history, history with math, um, English and math to make it interesting. The base, we study the Finnish model of homeschooling, of school actually. So Finland had one of the, at the time that we were doing this, had the, I think it was in the top two in terms of educational systems in the world. And a couple of things that we took from them. In that system, children didn't go to school before they were 7. There was no formal testing before like 13. Um, they were given very little homework. And the essence of their school system was to try and make it enjoyable. There's a saying that says that, if you enjoy what you do, you would never work a day in your life, and we have taken that and put it to the school setting, where we said if our children have fun, within their educational space, they would never go to school a day in their life. Most children see school as something that's arduous, and and without the having to see their friends, and which is the highlight of school. It was for me. I hated school, and I wish I had homeschooling. Then even though my mom's a teacher, um, that the actual academic process of school becomes very arduous, and it's not fun, so it's a task for them, it's almost like a little prison. So homeschooling offers, a lot of advantages, within how you set it up. Another thing that we say is that we realize that homeschooling really, really depends on the ability of the parent um, to be involved, in the lessons and in the process of homeschooling. What we do is that within our community homeschool, we only homeschool for like 3 days. We encourage that parents to send their children for 3 days, where the rest of the time, the other 2 days in the week, or 3 if they're using Saturdays, they would have to, really work along with what is being done in the community setting. So it is really the responsibility of the parent. And what we have seen is that school has been really used as more like a babysitting sort of tool. So within this time, my mom always says that teachers, and she is a retired teacher of over 40 years. She's been teaching since she was like 19, you know. And my mom says that, the face of teaching has changed, teachers are more facilitators. There are numerous tutorials, any subject or any subject matter you can find online. And if you have the willingness to sit with your child and go through that with them, you will find your homeschooling that much more enjoyable. And of course, every parent knows their child, and should be able to really manipulate the environment to make it as enjoyable as possible. Um, Time, I think these are challenges that persons normally offer as challenges to homeschooling time if parents are working. Within this environment, many of us have family members, close members who are underemployed or unemployed, who can be utilized within a family setting of education. So you may have 2 children, your sister may have 2 children, the cousins, you come across, but then you may have an aunt or uncle who is not, or even a close friend, a close family friend who has the time and who is willing, and y'all can work out, maybe some sort of payment or whatever it is. And that is also part of building a homeschool setting. In Barbados, as I said, the ministry is not really prepared for homeschooling. This has been dropped on them with the COVID-19 situation. And our organization had before, when we was doing the homeschool case those years ago, encouraged the government, the Ministry of Education, to set up a homeschool department, which they never did. Um, so as I said, excuse the dogs, um, that they never really grasp the whole issue of homeschooling. As the lady in the video said, I hope you can still hear me because the dogs outside getting on very bad. That there are some schools in the states that work with the parents, so they share the homeschooling. So, children can come in for evaluations, if they're problem areas, so they share, they can come in, they can be part of the school sports, they can be part of a school house, so they're part of, so there's a relationship. Homeschooling can share the relationship with formal schooling, with traditional schooling, which I personally think is the best way. Homeschooling is really something that has to be molded by the parent, so there's no hard and fast way, to homeschool. And it is really not that difficult, but the parents really just have to have that interest and intent. So I will pause there for any questions. Um, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Rasimba. And, I'm always amazed to listen to you. And, I see you as an activist. I see you as so many different things. And then I call you sometimes and you say, I'm teaching the children. And I'm so very impressed by that. And having seen how your daughters, your children, how they've grown up and what they've accomplished, it's really, really a blessing. And I'm so proud of the work that you're doing with the children, that you have hands-on. Believe it or not, I call him and he's teaching all kinds of subjects, and always talking about his mother and how his mother is supporting him. So you see that community that is happening, already. So I see Marjorie's hand is up. Marglor, I think I'm calling it Marjorie, but I know that's not the name. Maglor, hand is up, and we're going to have some questions at the end of it. So just hang on there, and we're going to give you that opportunity to ask your question.
Marcia, it wasn't a question. It was just with regards to the homeschool information that was being shown. Whoever it is who's handling needs to, there's a button I suspect that's optimized for video clip, that box is ticked. I think it was ticked in order to have shown the first part of your presentation. So it's still ticked. So that means that the screen is blurry for certain persons.
Okay,
just wanted to bring that to your attention because the chat is disabled.
Okay, so thank you so much. So you weren't able to see the information correctly?
No.
Okay, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting me know that, and we're gonna put that back up on the screen for you because that's important. Thank you so much, Maglor. I think that's her name. Well, we're gonna ask my other great friend, Jana O'Donnell. And Jana and we've been, I think, friends since I've been to Barbados. And she has homeschooled her children, and I call her children my children. She knows that. They've been part of Praise Academy. And Jana O'Donnell, she is an educator, and when she tells you what she was able to accomplish with her children, it's just amazing. So over to Jana O'Donnell. Welcome, Jana.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you, Jana.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
All right, cool. Well, I have 4 children, and I've been homeschooling since my oldest child was 5 years old, and that's 18 years of homeschooling. And so I've done a lot of trying to encourage the homeschooling community in Barbados, just so we have more of a community. There's been homeschoolers, but I think it's very important for us to have connections and help each other out. And when something, you run into a problem, it's great to have someone else who's also dealing with the same thing to be able to consult with. It's like, oh, my kid hates math. What do I do? I can't get them to remember their times table. What did you do? Things like that are really, really helpful. So Ras Samba did a great job doing a lot of the, background stuff, talking about how specifically to get your permission to homeschool in Barbados. And I think that something I want to be sure that everyone understands is that it's not for everyone, but it can be for anyone who wants to do it and who's willing to make the commitment of time. And you can do it. Not everyone wants to, not everyone likes it. So, I think, but it's great that we have that freedom. So, because all of our kids are different, right? And our families are different and we have different needs. So it's great when we have something that we can customize to make sure that our family's needs are met. So Marcia, you sent me some questions and I'm going to go over them. I will say one thing. I was already homeschooling when we moved to Barbados because I wanted to be part of my children's lives every day. And I also, as an educator, I'm also a teacher. I knew that the most specific learning happens in small settings. In America, you might have 25 or 30 children in the same classroom. And as a teacher, that's a challenge because each of those kids has a different needs, and each of them learn at different rates. So it's the smaller the class size, usually the more personalized you can get with the education and the easier it is to make sure everyone understands what's going on. So I always wanted to homeschool. We moved to Barbados when my oldest was 7 almost, and my second son was 5, and we were homeschooling then. And now I've got, my oldest son is pursuing a doctorate in material science engineering. And he's actually being paid to do that. Yay! And then my second son has a job as a civil engineer. My oldest daughter is working as a missionary, and I still have one at home. She's 16, and we just started her next to last year, her junior year in high school. So so I'm still, behind me is still a bookcase with school books because we're still doing this. Anyway, so the first question I have is I was given was, is my wife or husband really qualified as an educator? Ras Samba touched on this a bit. Teachers have become facilitators in a lot of ways, and you're certainly qualified to do that. And honestly, you're already teaching. If you're a parent, you're already teaching. You've taught them how to get dressed. You've taught them how to tie your shoes. You've taught them how to eat with a fork. I mean, every day you're teaching them, so you are already their teacher. It's just you're expanding your role to include more things, but you're capable and you can. And as he said, if you have a degree or CXCs, then the ministry is likely to look on you as qualified. But I promise you, if you are a walking, thinking adult, you know your colors, you know your CXCs. You're definitely good for the first couple of years with almost any, abilities at all. And the great thing about homeschooling is that you have the answer book, which is awesome because that helps. If you get lost, you can look at the answer book and kind of refresh your memory on what it is. So, that's really helpful. And if you're unsure, if you have the abilities, I'm sure you know someone who can help you with any areas that you're a little weak in, either to help you or to tutor your child. So we all know people, you know, I mean, for example, I was an English teacher, and so I feel very comfortable all the way through with English and history and a lot of science. But when my boys wanted to be engineers and they went into physics and calculus, my husband did a lot of it, and then we also used some online programs. So, you know, you just kind of find things to fill in gaps, but and that's part of being a facilitator, right? A lot of families in Barbados right now that we have that are homeschooling opt to homeschool for primary school and then send their child to take the common entrance and then transition into the school system in secondary school. And we have a lot of success stories. We have kids who've passed for really good schools. But there are, and also people have enjoyed that a lot because they were able to add more things into their curriculum, whether it's religious instruction or introducing science early or like experiments. One of my favorite things is kitchen table experiments, you know, just using the things that you find in your kitchen and, you know, doing experiments with them. It makes science learning so fun, you know. But, you know, art, music, you have that ability to bring those other things in. Then there are a few families who have opted to continue to homeschool into secondary school. And then, like I said, you know, you might supplement your curriculum with some online classes in areas that you don't feel completely comfortable in. Or even you can engage a tutor if you're feeling you need extra help. But there's so many online resources that are free that I would encourage you to look at those first. And we have a Facebook page that's Barbados Homeschoolers, and we have a ton of free curriculum, free resources on there. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about homeschooling or if you are homeschooling and you're, you know, need a little extra help, just go ahead and check out the Facebook page. And there's also a private group that you can apply for membership. But since we have things like our meetup places and like pictures of our kids, we don't let that be a public thing. So I guess the first thing you have to have if you want to be if you want to homeschool is you have a strong desire to be connected to your child's education, to have a real say in it. And you often have to be willing to commit the time to do so. And sometimes that's trickier than others. I know some families where the dad and the mom are working opposite shifts. So while dad's at work, mom's with the kids. When mom's at work, dad's with the kids. And they make that work. That's what they, you know, they want to be homeschooling. And so they have to do that to make that work. But, you know, maybe mom teaches the things she feels really good about. Dad teaches things that he feels really comfortable with. And one of the things we found was that our family was really close. We built a real closeness between the kids, between, you know, parents and child. And that has continued now that we have two kids that are, you know, adults and out in the world. Well, three kids that are adult and out in the world. One of them's far enough away that I don't see her very much, but we've just kept really close in touch, and they continue to do with each other, are very close to each other. Teaching your kid doesn't have to be expensive. As I said, there are lots of free online resources. You can borrow reading books from the library. Parents can share the expense of a math tutor to teach their kids together, or they can form a co-op where each parent teaches the subject that they enjoy. I know that in my time homeschooling, I've taught robotics class. I've taught creative writing class. I mean, in a co-op setting where, you know, a bunch of parents came together. And so that's worked out really well. And then, you know, we had another parent who was doing like preschool with the little ones. So that freed us parents up who had little ones to be able to do teaching of higher subjects. And also other parents can be great, other homeschool parents can be great resources for used curriculum, because whenever we finish with it, you know, I mean, If our, like, say your youngest has finally, you finally got your youngest up to a certain level, then everything that's below that, you're going to probably sell or give away. So if you know other homeschoolers, that can kind of be a great thing. They're like, hey, you want that stuff? All right, the second question. Will homeschooling prepare my kids academically? Will they be ready for college? Absolutely. I mean, if you want to do the work and you make sure that they've got the they take the subjects they're supposed to take, then absolutely. Like I said, I had two that went to university with scholarships and studied engineering, which is really, really hard stuff. So yes, my oldest son's name is Aiden, and I joked around and called him Project Exhibit A for a while, because when people would say to me, "Is it possible for a kid to succeed academically?" I would just lean over and tap my son on the shoulder, like, "Here he is. He got into college with a scholarship." So yes, it can be done. You have to research and make sure they're taking the classes they need to take, or taking the exams and getting the qualifications, however you choose to do it. And there are a lot of books and things that tell you how to map out your child's secondary school career so that they are college ready. But I also tell parents, not every kid wants or needs to go to college. There are trade schools. There are other areas for kids to succeed in. And not everybody fits in the box. I don't think we should, what are we really trying to do? I believe our goals should be to help our child succeed in whatever area he or she is best suited for, whatever is their talent, whatever brings them the most satisfaction as an adult, whether it's being a professor or being a plumber. It's them going to university helps them succeed, but not everybody has to go to the university to succeed. And we kind of have to be, I had to be careful not to try to look at their academic success as a feather in my cap. It's got to be about them. What's best for them? And sometimes it isn't college. All right, number 4, I don't want my child growing up without good social experiences. Will they become a social weirdo? No. I've always found this really funny because it's a really kind of an old, outdated stereotype, and it assumes that you never let your child out of the house. Like homeschooling is this prison sentence. But that's not how it works. Now, well, maybe in COVID, then we're all under the prison sentence, if that's true, because none of us are able to go anywhere. But we're involved, all of my kids were involved in extracurricular activities. They did football, they did dance with Marcia, they did drama, music lessons, gymnastics. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities out there to get your kid around other kids. Even meeting, friends and family at the beach or something, Then also, of course, if your family if you're a person of faith, then your child is with you whenever you go to your place of worship and there are other kids there. So opportunities exist even during COVID, although we have to be more creative and cautious now. But in my experience, homeschoolers are better socialized than almost anyone because they're used to associating with all ages, so they're just a little bit more comfortable with talking to whoever, All right, how do I keep my kid focused on their schoolwork at home? I think the first thing you have to do is unlearn the idea that all learning has to take place sitting at a desk. I found that a lot of the best learning takes place when you get a little creative, like Rosamba was saying. If they like cars and then you're doing things with cars and you're giving them Hot Wheels cars to practice their subtraction, or you give them sidewalk chalk and tell them to go out in the driveway and write their name. you know. I had one child, my youngest daughter, who practiced her multiplication tables while she was doing cartwheels. Why? I have no idea, but it worked, you know, and that's the bottom line. You did ministry and the curriculum tell you what they need to learn, but how they do it is only limited by your creativity and what works for your child. And that was always the bottom line for me. They would say, Mom, can I read my book while I'm sitting upside down? Well, if you can answer the questions afterward, absolutely. I mean, what does it matter? If the end result is I want them to learn, then how they do it, maybe that's not such a big thing that we need to be so caught up with that it has to be on a worksheet, right? Or it has to be sitting down with their feet together and their hands down, you know. Maybe that one child studies best when music is on. Maybe another one has to be outside. My younger son had to hold his guinea pig while he was reading. Why? I don't know, but it worked. When he was holding the guinea pig, he remembered better. I don't know what the magic guinea pig was, but you don't mess with the magic guinea pig. When something works, you just go, oh, okay. And then you just enjoy the fact that it works, right? And you do have to have some time when they're at the desk, but you're going to find they're much more reasonable about focusing at the desk if you're a little more flexible about how they learn in other areas, right? Okay. Number 6, how can I homeschool my older kids while taking care of my young children? This is a tricky one. I will tell you with 4, this is a tricky one. But I'll break it down a little bit. Basically, there are 2 kinds of work that your child does when they're learning. But you do your lesson, and then they have something that's called guided practice. That means you're there and you're helping them with it. And then once they figure out guided practice, then you're supposed to let them do independent practice. So you're not there standing over them saying, remember, 7 + 3 is 10, right? You're giving them something to do, and then you're letting them do it on their own. And that's how you know whether or not they really understood it, right? If they can do it without your help. So during guided practice and during the lesson, I often had toys on the ground for my little ones, or I had them in my lap while I was doing the lesson and while I was helping older children, or I would do maybe a more difficult thing while the little ones were down for a nap. And then whenever I set them for independent practice and let them work independently, then I would shift my focus to my younger children and just stay in the same area. So if the older child needed my help, I was there. As they got older, sometimes one of the boys would read to the girls, or one of them would play an educational game with them or something like that. And we played educational games that were multi-level. So those were kind of some of the things that I did. How can you successfully plan a homeschool day when you're busy? You have to be organized. I mean, that's the truth. Because life happens and it likes to interrupt you, and it's really annoying. So if you've got to kind of know what you're trying to get through in a day, right? And sometimes it won't happen. Sometimes life wins and you just have to go, okay, we're going to do a little more tomorrow because today just didn't work. But we had one car. So every day I had to go take my husband to work, you know, and there's nobody to leave the kids with. So my kids were with me. There were certain things that had to happen. Lunch had to get made, you know, things like that. So you just kind of work around those. So I would say be organized, but also be flexible, because when things go to heck in a handbasket, you just say, you know, when to push and you know when to go, nah, not going to happen today. So we got to roll it over for tomorrow. And that's kind of a thing you learn as you go, you know? So there's sometimes when you push and you shouldn't have, and you're like, oh, that was a bad idea. And then there's sometimes when you let it roll, and then the next day you're like, oh, now I have a lot to do and I really should have pushed. So it's a learning process, but I would say organization is very important. How can I keep my homeschool supplies organized? Well, ideally, what we would all love is to have a separate room for homeschooling, a desk for all the children. And if you can get that, and that's a possibility, fantastic. That's awesome, because that makes it easier, because then you don't have to put everything away at night. You don't have to take it all out. But that's really not reality for most people. We really don't have our own room dedicated to homeschooling. And sometimes we don't even have our own desks for the kids. Sometimes you're homeschooling at the kitchen table, totally fine. You just have to roll with it. You have to be flexible. But homeschoolers love bookshelves and bins. I will tell you that we love them, because we always accumulate books. It's just a thing. And bins, because we have all these great things that we want to use, Play-Doh and paints and books, scissors and craft supplies and all this other stuff. I like bins that fit under beds, because then they're not out in my way all the time. But then you kind of have to train yourself and the kids to go, okay, it's the end of the day. We have to put all our stuff away, put it in the right bin. So the best things for us have either been a bin per child or a bin per subject, depending on how many kids we're doing the subject. So that's my advice. That's what's worked for us. I mean, whatever works for you is fine. There's no rule. Video curriculum. So I want to say it's a trap. I really do, because people get this idea that if I have a video curriculum, if I have an online curriculum, then I can just park Johnny in front of the computer and leave him, and learning will magically happen. Anyone who has ever had a child and has left them unattended for even a short time can tell you that good things generally do not happen while you are gone, because Johnny is a human being and he's tempted. And if the internet is on, and you're going to come back and he's going to be playing funny cat videos in the background and Minecraft down in the corner, because he's a kid, right? He doesn't have the impulse control. You cannot leave your kid's education to a computer. You can use a computer to help your child, but it's a tool. It's not a babysitter, right? And it's not a teacher. So if you do online classes, and those are great if you are present and if you are checking up and making sure the kid isn't sitting there all day, because that's also not going to help them concentrate. It's been a real challenge with COVID, because a lot of kids just don't learn well that way. Even really bright kids, when they are only doing online stuff and there's not physical interaction, it's really a struggle. So I would say it's a tool. Use it if you need it, when you need it, because sometimes it's great. Sometimes videos about stuff, YouTube's about subjects are fascinating. They're great tools to get kids interested. But don't park your kid in front of a computer and pay for a curriculum and walk away and think that learning is going to happen, because it's just not. So, and that's not homeschooling. Homeschooling is about being directly involved in your kids' education. And that's kind of the opposite. So anyway, those are the questions that I had that were in my list to be answered.
Well, thank you so much, Dana. You did such a great job. And I can tell you, as I said, I told you they're my children as well. Aiden, Aiden, Parker, Cara, and the last one who is still with you, and she's now 16 years old. While she was being homeschooled, was also representing Barbados in gymnastics. So they did a lot, sporting activities, social activities, etc. And Cara did a movie with us, and I love those kids. And they have done so well. And as she said, everybody, they don't have to necessarily be off doing engineering as her children were, but they might go off to trade school. They might come out and they want to do business. It's not about everybody, this cookie cutter thing that one of her children is a missionary. And I'm
Yep.
sure Simba, if he had the time, he would tell us about his children as well. So they do different things, okay? All right, and I'm going to thank you so much, Jana, and I hope you can stick around. We have quite a number of questions in the chat. And so I'm going to ask my presenters to be looking in the chat and seeing if you can answer some of them while we are talking, because we want to make this as practical and as meaningful for people as possible. We have with us Lisa Gill, and I know Lisa, because of her phone, she can't be on very long. And so I'm going to ask her between, probably 10 to 12 minutes. Lisa is going to give us her experience in homeschooling. She's been homeschooling for about 6 years, and has a really interesting story about her little ones. So Lisa, can you open your mic and go ahead? Welcome.
Yes, hi, good night. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Lisa. Go right ahead.
Good. Blessed good night to everyone. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to actually speak about homeschooling. I have been homeschooling my children from the time they were born. My daughter is 6 years old and my son is 8. And my reason for homeschooling was not only because we were going overseas, but as well for moral purposes, to teach our children true education, whereas we have to learn how to farm and to mold our children's character, so that they will be strong individuals as they grow up. Understand? So that was one of my basically reasons, me and my husband. But along with the homeschooling is wonderful. Simba has really helped me out a whole lot. Whereas the homeschooling is concerned, he does a very, very excellent job, especially with my son. We have a very good relationship, as well as the process of how it went. He actually wrote the letter up. We had spoken about the reason he wrote the letter up. We went in for the meeting and everything had went through because we have the assistance of the tutors. Who's there to help us. But as I said, Simba sits down face to face with my children. They interact, they talk, they do the different creative ways as to how you can teach children. For instance, my son, he loves to do art. Extremely, he loves art. And Simba is very good, whereas he teach him how to draw, how to make things look extremely beautiful. But along with the homeschooling, there are many different ways in which a person can homeschool. I'm very, in everything that I do, I actually have my children there with me. Might it be if I'm outside, I'm doing any gardening, if I am teaching them about how to read, how to write, how to spell, all of these things are very important for a child. And especially whereas it comes to reading, because that's where children actually, that's where they actually learn, And for me, for the first time, it was a very interesting experience because all along he was there to help and to guide me throughout the process of doing everything. Spiritually, what I really, spiritually speaking, for my children, the most important thing that I think for me as a parent is to see how they grasp everything that has been taught to them so far, whether it be the small things like how to cook a meal with me, or how to get along, how to socialize with your children outside. When you take them outside and they're walking and they're playing with others, what school do children go to? And they tell them like being people are quite shocked because they have this idea that homeschooling children, they don't know how to socialize or talk. You know, they're just children that are boxed up. They don't know anything. But when my children are out there and they're speaking all by themselves, and I'm not telling them what to say or what to do. They're actually doing it by themselves. It actually is to see what homeschooling is really all about, right? So I'm very thankful for that. Um, Whereas the curriculum might be, or might it be the topics. Here in Barbados, we have, there are different curriculums that people follow. You can either go through with, if you choose, just like in the video where you have it playing, if you are so interested in purchasing one of the kits, you can actually purchase the kit. You can do it as the tutor is going through something with you. You can also be interactive with your children throughout the day in everything that you're doing. You don't just leave them to the tutor and that's it, right? You are there discussing everything point by point. That time the children they're very happy. To be honest, my children love when I'm homeschooling them. Everywhere I go, they want to go with me. If they're doing work or whatever the case may be, they want to be close beside me or their father for that reason, right? So it's rather important, the bonding, the time that we spend together, the the way how we connect is very important as a parent and a child, right? And I think that I'm very, very, very thankful for what Simba has really done. He has done an excellent job. I never say that anybody, we, along with what he is doing as a parent, we can connect together so that we can raise up these children in the correct manner that it should be done in, right?
Well,
That's
thank you so much.
basically.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Very informative. And you know what is great about it is that she has the younger ones. You know, we heard from Rasimba, who helps the community of homeschoolers and who's also helped Lisa. We hear from Jana, who's been doing it for 18 years and, you know, have big children doing doctorate. And here's Lisa with some little ones. So that is awesome. And Lisa, if you want to go off and come back on, so because we have some great questions, there's some practical questions. I see Bongo Greece is asking some serious questions there that we want to answer before we go tonight. So Lisa, you can always go off and come back on because I know you might be having a little challenge with your phone. Okay, but we're going to go, thank you so much, Lisa. We're going to go all the way to Trinidad and Tobago, to my other great friends. I have some great friends all over, and it's Reverend Kwame Kamau. And he says, I got to pronounce his name properly, Kwame Kamau. And he is going to talk about that community, right? He's going to talk about the community of homeschooling. And he himself is a product of homeschooling, never went to a regular school in his life. He was homeschooled. All right. So we have Reverend Kwame Kamau with us. Welcome, sir.
Oh, thank you so very much, beloved Queen Sister out of Barbados. I call you the Queen of Caribbean Talk. And
thank you so much, but can you speak up a little bit more? We can't hear you.
Oh, no problem at all. I was making the point that you are the Queen of Caribbean Talk, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you so much for the excellent service that you've been giving, of course, to the Caribbean region. CARICOM salutes you, Trinidad salutes you, certainly the Royal House of the Kamaus salute you, and we definitely salute you twice because you got the Kamau name right on this evening. So again, salute for that. That having been said, you are indeed correct. I am a product of homeschooling. My father and mother, they were not just parents, they were parents on steroids and energy drinks. So they were super parents in that sense. My father's a 4th-degree black belt, and he had a school which is called, of course, Kamakas International, Camels African and martial arts school. And this school, as it were, was the platform for us growing up. I heard a little earlier about some of the challenges, or some, perhaps more accurately put, some of the concerns that some of the parents and those who are looking on were asking in terms of, will your children be properly socialized? Will they have the skill set? Well, really, that all depends on you, the parent. But again, because I'm focusing on what we would call the collective resources that can be brought to bear, I will talk about a bit about my life story and the success that I had personally. Of course, I'm a reverend African, a Pan-Africanist, entrepreneur, multiple companies. I'm a serial entrepreneur, as a matter of fact. We are involved, of course, in environmentalism. I'm involved in advocacy on a number of areas, from cannabis reparations to the issue of what we would refer to as, again, activism and advocacy in the area of education, Pan-African education, and Afro-centered, of course, approaches. And so all of these things happen not by way of guesswork, but by way, of course, of dedication. So the first question I would ask to any parent is, do you have the love? Do you have the passion? Because certainly my parents had that and then some. Perhaps, looking back in hindsight, I wish they had perhaps a little less passion and a little less love, because they certainly saw to it that we had everything that we needed. And what they couldn't do directly, and I could scarcely think of anything, because between the two of them, they are a powerhouse. Thankfully, they are still alive. And so I salute you, Baba. I salute you, Mama. But certainly, because of the construct that was created, we were actually a homeschooling family that opened our doors to other children in the neighborhood. So through our homeschooling network, we were able to teach martial arts. We were able to teach African drumming, African singing. Till this very day, I actually engage in vocal training and vocal development, a free class that I do via virtual conferencing. And of course, that is as a result of those formative years growing up in the culture. Today, I'm a black belt in martial arts because, again, of that homeschooling environment. My PE wasn't just relegated to doing leapfrogs, and a few jumping jacks. We had to do kicks and punches and flips and back stands and handstands and front stands and that type of thing. So again, do you have the passion? If you have the passion and you have the love, that's the first step. The second thing to do would be to associate yourself with those who have the skills. Because while you may have the passion and the love, you may not have all of the skill set with which to engage not only things in relation to sports and culture, but again, the academics. You may be strong in maths, but perhaps weak in English. You may be good in social studies, but you're not so good in the area, of course, of science. And so when you are thinking about homeschooling, it is always ideal to do so by way of a collectivist strategy or corporate strategy. In that regard, I have some good news for you, because in Trinidad and Tobago, if you are a local like me, so big up all Trinis in the house, you have the Homeschoolers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I'll repeat that. You have the Homeschoolers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, that is what I would refer to as a generic Homeschoolers Association. They cater for everyone in terms of all demographics, all ethnicities, all colors, all classes, all creeds. So it's really a fantastic port of call for those persons who are seeking, again, to engage all the necessary procedure, all of the government protocols. They even have samples as it relates to the issue of writing that letter to your school. If you already enrolled your child in the public school system, there are letters for that. And of course, there are letters as well, templates in terms of addressing, the Ministry of Education with respect to the process. So they have not only those templates, but by way of the very experienced homeschooling teachers, some of them with 10, some of them with 15, some of them with over 20 years experience in that setting, in that forum. They can certainly point you in the direction of curricula and certainly point you in the direction, of course, of syllabi that you can avail yourself of. More often than not, it would be international syllabi and curricula using the English model, using the American model, so whatnot and what have you. And so that's a good, again, general port of call. Favorably, it does not end there. In Trinidad, we are forming right now as we speak something referred to as the Afrocentric Homeschoolers Association. So we saw the need. While HAT is fantastic and they do an amazing job. I have a brother-in-law who's a part of the executive of HAT. I have a sister who's one of the founding directors of HAT. They do a marvelous job and an amazing job at HAT. However, for those of us within the community, especially the underserved community in terms of Afrocentric education, for a number of years, there was, as it were, and still is, an approach to education within the CARICOM region that is really Eurocentric. And that is, of course, as a result of the fact that we inherited our education system from our predecessors, and our predecessors were operating, of course, from a European mindset. And so it's not necessarily that someone was staying up all night trying to figure out how to indoctrinate children. I certainly hope in terms of Eurocentric values. However, when we translate from colonial jurisdictions and colonies into our independence status, for many of us, apart from changing our anthem and our flag, we didn't do much else. The parliamentary system remained the same, the education system remained the same, and many things as it relates to all aspects of culture and life maintained a very Eurocentric value system. And I'm saying that that was okay when we couldn't do better. But now we have to do what we would call constituent specific education. All of the science is out that if one has a healthy sense of identity, a healthy sense of self, a healthy sense of purpose, you would do so much the better. And so in that regard, I want to salute my Rastafari brethren, King Simba out of Barbados, and the phenomenal work you're doing, Adrian. It's always a pleasure being on a platform with you because you are one of those doers. And so like you, I'm taking a page out of your book. Maybe I might borrow a chapter or 10 if you don't mind, because in Trinidad, we are setting up that Afrocentric homeschooling platform so we can cater to individuals who not only want to learn about maths and English and science and social studies, but they want to learn about Africa, not through the lens only of chattel slavery, coming in through, as it were, the slave ships and all of the Ma'angamizi, the genocide and the Holocaust, but looking at the pre-slavery era and epoch, where we were kings and queens, where we were architects and builders, where we were the inventors of science. We give credit, of course, to Herodotus as being, the father of history. Herodotus tells us in his Greek writings that he learned at the feet of Kemet. We give credit to Pythagoras for the theorem A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared. But Pythagoras tells us in his writings in no uncertain terms that the masters of not just maths, but physics and chemistry and all applied sciences is Kemet. That's where I learned from. And so it's very important for our children that we give them that healthy sense of self, and an Afrocentric education association certainly goes a long way in terms of helping them with proper self-imaging and a proper overstanding, as a Rastafari has taught me over the years, of self. And so we spoke about the passion and the love. We spoke about the skill set. We spoke about the fact that as a community, we can do much more together than we can ever even think about doing as individuals. I also want to advise that there is even now an international Pan-African collectivist platform. So I spoke about the Afrocentric Homeschoolers Association. I spoke about HAT, the Homeschoolers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, as I close, let me talk about another opportunity. through a group called Liberated Minds that operates out of the US of A. And you can Google them, liberatedmindsinstitute.com. You have Dr. Alicia Blackwood, so I would want to salute her on today. You have Dr. Queen, Her Excellency Thais Snowden, masters in pedagogy, masters in education, persons who have done a tremendous work with homeschooling their children, over 25 years of experience among them, persons who have homeschooled their children to become pilots and engineers and passionpreneurs and a number of things like that. And not only did they do a phenomenal job of their children, one of their children had such a great job of it that he was licensed as a pilot at the age of 16. You couldn't do that if you were just attending the primary and secondary school as usual. And so the liberatedmindsinstitute.com is a fantastic resource for anyone that wants to avail themselves of course, what we call Pan-African or Afrocentric education. So you still get the core curriculum, you still get the core information, but you would get the trips to Africa, the trips to Ethiopia, the trips to Ghana added on, you get the African languages added on component, you would get those positive image in terms of the continent of Africa, and you'd certainly be able, as a result of that, to do much better. Favorably, the Afrocentric homeschoolers of Trinidad and Tobago, which we are now forming, is partnering with Liberated Minds, Queen Thais, Queen Blackwood, and others, so that persons who are in the diaspora, those who are in Trinidad, those who are in the Caribbean, who want to avail themselves of that international platform through our platform, certainly you would be able to benefit from group rates. If you join our Homeschoolers Association, we would be guaranteed group rates, so that way you would not have to pay the individual price minus the discounts. All right, so I wanted to make mention of that so that we can know that we don't have to do it alone. Favorably, and of course, last but not least, I have my wife here at home, and she does a marvelous job because as a Pan-Africanist and entrepreneur and all of these million hats that I wear, you know, sometimes I may not have the time to do a particular subject or particular class with them. And so we will tag team and we will work together. And I've always believed, and I maintain this position as I close, Queen Marcia, that individually we can only beg, but collectively we can bargain. And so that collectivism begins with the father and the mother in the home, showing that solidarity, being each other's keeper and supporting each other and the children. Because again, in closing, the homeschool journey is really a journey for the family. It's not a journey for the child. It's a journey for the entire family.
Correct.
We are doing it with our children and they are having a ball of a time. They are learning Hebrew. They can tell you the days of the week in Hebrew. They can tell you the entire Hebrew alphabet. They can tell you the numbers in Hebrew. They can count in 10 in Hebrew, the colors in Hebrew, animals in Hebrew. And this is their second term. This is only their second term of homeschool. What would it look like in 2 years? If that happens in 6 months, what about in 2 years? How are they going to look? In 10 years, how are they going to look because they are young? So I'm not out of words, but certainly wanting to allow you and the others maybe certain points pointed and put in questions that you
and guess what, we have so many questions, and so we'll get a time to speak again. But I just want to say that thank you so much, very informative, and that's the Afrocentric Homeschool of Trinidad and Tobago that is being set up. And I know Rasimba has an organization here in Barbados that he's going to tell us about, which has been doing a lot of work in the community and helping people. As you just heard, Lisa Gill talked about how much Rasimba helped him, in getting started. And Jana also talked about another homeschool association here in Barbados, which is on Facebook. And when she comes back on, we're going to get all that information for you. And the word is community. The word is community. The word is the collective. The word is interdependence, all of that. All right, so I know Rasimba has a question, but I'm going to go right to Adrian Green at this time, and then back to Rasimba, and we're going to then start the questions, okay? So Adrian Green, if you could open up your camera for us, please, and your microphone. And Adrian is going to give us his experience of, you know, homeschooling. And I think he's there. Yes, okay, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We're seeing more the light than you. Okay, lovely, wonderful. Another one of my great friends. You know, we started off, I love to tell people the story, Adrian. We started off on a rocky foot, you know, but we've become the best of friends. We understand one another. I've learned a lot from Adrian Green, you know, and a lot of what I'm doing now, it's because of those conversations, heated conversations, vexation of the spirit. But I'm glad, I'm so glad, and we love him, Dave and I, we love you dearly. So over to you, Adrian, and just tell us about your experience.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrian Green. I'm the father of two daughters, 10 years old and 7 years old, and I've been homeschooling both of them since birth. There's really not too much I can add to what the other speakers have said already. They really did an excellent job of detailing the intricacies of being a homeschooler and homeschooling. So I guess what I can add, though, is for those parents who may from a background where homeschooling is a common thing, or if you don't have a community around you to lean upon with respects to your homeschooling. This is the situation that I entered into when I started. I didn't have a community. I didn't have experience as a in homeschooling. I did teach secondary school for 5 years, but anybody who teaches secondary school knows it's very different teaching toddlers and little children. And I was very unsure of myself at the time. And if I would be totally honest, it was psychologically and emotionally very different, very difficult. Because in taking on, my wife and I, in taking on that responsibility of homeschooling our children, what it means is that we now are totally and entirely responsible for the way those children turn out. And whereas most parents outsource that responsibility to the schools for the majority of the day, all of the responsibility now fell on us. So a parent who sends their children to school, if they realize that something is not going well, they can go down to the school and quarrel with the headmaster or quarrel with the teachers, and or blame it on the influences of the other children at school. But when you take on that responsibility of homeschooling, especially if you do not have a community as I did, then it's all on you. And I don't know how it feels for anybody else, but I took that on as I felt that way, and I felt that responsibility. And if I must be honest, I think that in the initial stages, I passed that burden on to my first daughter in my homeschooling. I passed that anxiety and that neurosis on to my first daughter in terms of that anxiety about getting it right and doing everything perfect and making sure she didn't fall behind and all of that kind of thing. Because not only did I not have a homeschooling community, there were people around me who felt that my decision was highly questionable in terms of family members and friends. And people have mentioned it here, people can say, but she can be able to socialize with other children. Adrian, you're an artist, you know something about maths. You are not a qualified teacher. You're like, you sure you want to do this? And I felt it. it was some pressure on me. I felt the pressure, to tell you the truth. But you know, the irony of it is that when people would meet my children, they would say, wow, you're very bright. Where do you go to school? And my children would say, we are homeschooled. And this look would come over their faces like, you should be. And some of them would actually say, oh, that's great. You're ready for school now. So it is hard for them to compute that a child can be articulate, a child can be socially well adjusted, a child can be up to par and in some ways beyond children in the school system without having the educational structure. What I would say is very important is your reason for homeschooling. I think that for me, you know, I know many wonderful children who have gone right through the Barbadian educational school system. They're articulate, they're bright, they're well-adjusted, they're emotionally balanced. So I am not one of those who thinks that it is so horrible. However, what I do feel is that because of a lot of the stuff that Reverend Kamau just spoke about, here in the Caribbean, we have a colonial society. It's not a post-colonial society as some people would like to argue. It is a colonial society. And that colonial structure is largely kept intact by the educational system. That is where we send our children to be socialized into a colonized mentality. It is an institution. There are institutions in some of the most heavy meanings of the word. And for me, I know that when I was in school, I felt the weight of that institutionalization, being the kind of person that I am. And I didn't want that for my children. But what I was not prepared for was how much, even though I took my children away from the institution, I was not prepared for how much the institution was inside of me. When I hear the story of the previous speaker, I marvel and I go, wow, that's amazing. Because his parents saved him from a lot of the psychological conditioning that goes on in our school system. I wasn't prepared for how much of that system was in me. So not having had the experience of homeschooling myself, being homeschooled or really seeing anyone do it, I found I fell back upon my default system, the system that I knew best, that was inside of me. And I think it was Jana, if I got the name right, who talked about wanting your children to feeling that learning only happens at the table and that, you know, there must be this, Simba mentioned this, there must be this intense timetable and structure that you plug the children into for a certain amount of hours a day. And there were a lot of misconceptions that I had because of the default system that was inside of me, because of my anxiety.
So that you can do something that you've never done.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Adrian. Thank you.
Yeah, because of those anxieties but I learned to relax. I learned that, as Rasimba said, it is really not as big a deal or as difficult as some people would like to make it out to be. Really and truly for me, homeschooling is really real parenting. Original, organic, natural parenting. As I think it was Miss Gill that said, her children are with her all the time, and homeschooling goes on 24 hours a day because every time you're with your child, you have an opportunity to school, not in the authoritarian, rigid way that we schooling, learning. For example, my dad, in some cases making her miserable about it, you know. Fortunately, by the grace of the Almighty, she turned out loving to read. Like, she loves reading. She will tell you she loves reading. And I'm like, you know, God is good, because the way I was pushing it, I could have made it a real chore. My second daughter now, because as you learn, you experience, you know, homeschooling, you relax a little bit and you're so intense about it, at least me. And, you know, you realize that children move at their own pace, at different paces, and you don't try to keep them to some artificial timetable that's set by the educational system. She had it easy. But at one point in time, I thought maybe she had it too easy, because while at the age that my daughter was reading books with hundreds of pages, she was telling me, I don't like reading, I don't like reading, I don't like reading. And I was real nervous about it. But I'll tell you the truth, Marcia, I can't even tell you exactly when she learned to read. It happened so naturally in the course of our family structure and our family experience. You know, I would have sat with her and spent some time, you know, forming letters and reading and stuff. But when she became the reader that she is today, I can't tell you exactly when that happened. I know that she reads at a level beyond most of the children that I interact with, at a level beyond her 7 years. I know that now at 7, when just about a year or two ago, she was telling me she didn't like to read. Now she tells me she loves reading. So I have a long way to go, as I said, 10 and 7. The math has gotten to a point where, you know, I'm struggling with it. So I've engaged a math tutor. And fortunately, I just tell you this second to last story before I shut off. I got a math tutor who was recommended by someone. And the first thing she asked me was, how old is the child? I said 10. She said, well, she's preparing for the 11 plus then. I said, well, not really. We haven't decided if she's going to do the 11 plus or not. The tutor said to me, okay, because I don't do 11 plus. I have some friends who do that, but I don't prepare children for the 11 plus. I asked, why not? She said, I'm not into that drilling and you know, that repetition and that kind of thing. I'm more about teaching numeracy and learning to think mathematically. I said, bingo, that's what I want. You know? So there are resources out there are people out there who understand and who get it. Because in closing, I'd like to say that we talk about, we want to take our children out of the educational system for various reasons. Some people, you know, want to take them away from certain societal influences. Some people want to control their influences. Some people would love them to progress at a faster rate than they think that they will progress in the schools. But I think, again, it was Jana that said it before. We always have to remember it's really not about you and your reasons. That child has come into the world with a blueprint. Structure inside of them that is waiting to unfold. Some people call it destiny. Some people call it a spirit. I ain't here to judge, whatever you want to call it. That child comes in this world. And anybody who has more than one child know that that child come into this world a person already. And for me, homeschooling is about being a parent and learning that person that you have been given the privilege of facilitating their growth and development, and as gently and as carefully and as lovingly as possible, give them the space and that they need to become better who they already are.
Yes.
So homeschooling for me is parenting, Marcia.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Very, very engaging, very engaging. All of the speakers, people are just sending messages how informative this is. And it's just the beginning. And we're just scratching the surface, as you can see from the number of questions that are in the chat. All right, Rasimba, you have your hand up. Can you, I know you want to
Yeah.
say something. Go ahead, sir.
I actually wanted to address one of the questions.
Yes.
And the question was, and this was, I think, one of the first questions, and the person asked about evaluations, you know, and I want to take evaluations off of what both Jen, I think her name was, and what Adrian said. One of the things that we need to do with homeschooling, people that are serious about homeschooling, is to unschool ourselves. You know, Adrian just spoke about it perfectly. Evaluations. And with that in mind, you know, we're not thinking about how would a teacher sit down and mark a paper and this. So we have children, you know, we all know when our child is proficient at washing the dishes, when they haven't done it properly, or when they have not done it at all. You know, we have children that, you know, that for what, you know, some little children just don't like to bathe for whatever reason, you know. So they will go in the bath and turn on the water and then come out and try to pull one and say, "Oh, daddy, I bathe," you know. So you make your evaluation. So we know how to evaluate. We know if a child is doing tables, and I'm saying recite the 8 times table. We know if the child can rattle it off, 8 ones, 8 2, blah, 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 right? Proficient, you know, if they have to study a little bit, or if they don't know it at all, you know. Um, our organization, with the help of my mother, we have set up evaluation cards, which she did herself, and it is basically, you know, if the child knows the thing, you know, if it needs help, if it needs a lot of help, or if it's proficient. So within each topic, whether it is fractions, whether it is, you know, and I'm speaking just on a primary school level. Um, so those evaluations are very important, you know, especially the Ministry of Education. They're supposed to, or they can at any time send an officer to do an inspection to see how your child is doing, look through the books, you know, those evaluation sheets come in very handy. I must say, you know, in my time of homeschooling, I have not seen any of these officers come around. You know, every year you have to reapply. Um, Lisa would have gone through that a number of times, and I would like to plug here, you know, when Lisa came, her son Elias was 5, you know, and he was reading, you know, like an 8-year old, you know, and he loved art and he loved cars, you know, and I would have used that to shape, you know, some of the lessons that he was having a little more problems with. So that is, but I really want to speak about the evaluation. And a lot of people spoke about the socializing, which was one of the things that we had a lot of, you know. And in our case, remember I said I came into homeschooling on an advocacy boat, so to speak, you know. And one of the reasons for the parents not wanting the children to go to school, they had never been to school, was the environment, you know, especially in the so-called not top of the line schools. The environments in the St. George secondaries, the environments in the St. Lucie secondaries, right? Which I had argued, you know, in court, would be arguably some of the worst places for your child to be socialized, you know? And that is a debate. What I would also like to say, you know, our organization, and like what I'm hearing here, you know, most of the children that have come to me are children who have been in school, unlike Lisa's children, who, because of learning disabilities, couldn't keep up. You know, I've had a child that was over bullied, right? To the point that he wasn't just doing anything. You know, I've had children come from the Alma Paris school. You know, parents saying, "Well, okay, my child has deficiencies, but they treat them, you know, like if they have, you know, and they don't challenge them." You know, I had a little girl who when she came, when I say little girl, she couldn't walk up 6 flights of steps. That was like Mount Everest. She was 20 and she couldn't read see the dog jump, right? Or see Spot run, according to that. What I'm saying is that she couldn't read anything simple. Right now, she's on my WhatsApp and we speak every day. We text one another, you know. Her mother is not looking for her to, because she is seriously challenged, and that's another show because that happened through vaccination. Um, and I have several of those. But my point is that homeschooling offers another avenue, not just for the children that want to go to secondary school, children that want to go to college and universities, but for parents who just want their child to have a fair chance. Right now, I work with a little boy. Um, he was coming out of a secondary school. He is challenged, but he is a boss artist. He's better than me, and I feel I'm good. You know, um, and one of the things he would like to do is go to BCC to do graphic art, you know, and he loves cartooning. And what I did with him last year, we did a project on Kwanzaa, and he created his own cartoon, his own coloring book. And we sold the coloring book, and he made money from selling his coloring book. So I introduced him to a business model at the level of art he was at. So what I mixed the English. So what I had to do, he learned about the principles of Kwanzaa. He picked one, and then he would have done a composition, his own story, creative writing, you know, and then he went to what he loved, which was art, which was to illustrate it, inline drawings, making the coloring book, and I have that online still so people can access. My last point on that question was the critical thinking, having those discussions. When you have a big class, like what Jenna was saying with 25 and 30 children, you don't have the time to have those conversations and those discussions with the children, and that is very important. So like for me, my classes don't go above 5 children, because I have to have the time with each of them to have conversations, what they're thinking, and like Adrian said, when I come, I have a timetable, but if my timetable says math on Monday morning and my student comes and he says, Simba, I feel like doing English, we're doing English, you know, but then we will agree that we will do math either later on or tomorrow. So it's about building that relationship. Homeschooling is a journey, right? And as Adrian said, um, it really is about parenting.
Yes.
When I do my subjects, and I don't know something, a topic area, I YouTube it, and my student and I, we sit down and we learn it together.
Correct.
And even when I make mistakes, they're always fussy, and excited to point out where I'm wrong.
So
You know,
it calls a humility.
yes, but it is about building a relationship.
Yes.
When you homeschool, you are rebuilding a relationship, right? And the last point, and I think Jenna can speak about this, and Adrian touched on it, is parent support. We spoke about community, but community in the light of the activities that the children will be engaged in, right? But it is quite different having to be with your child day in, day out, all day, right? And have that responsibility. Parents burn out, and sometimes they just need to have the children. We're not homeschooling and we burn out. And we just want children to go by the grandmother, go and spend the day somewhere, You just need that time, and the community is not only good for the academic side of it and the tutorials and the activities, but for parent to parent support, parent to parent support, like Adrian said, if you are not the school or unschooled and you're still on the programming of the education system, that can fry your brain, and that would be and you can pass that on to the children.
Correct.
So it is very important that homeschooling in essence is about creating. Remember, I started by saying it is about you directing your child's education, and that can be shaped and molded in any particular way. You know what I mean? That not you want, but your child would like. So that's all I have
Excellent.
to say.
Excellent. This is so good. You know, when I started out, like Adrian, I didn't have this all of this information. You know, I made a lot of mistakes, especially with the first one. You know, but you make the mistakes, but it's parenting. You know, like because we make mistakes in parenting all the time. You know, but I have there's a question there and that I want Maglory, if she could turn on her camera, because she's just had the experience. Maglore. Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, she's going to answer it for us because she's just had that experience of having to take a child through common entrance. There are some people who might not want the children to, as Adrian was saying, to go through that common entrance, you know, that structure. There's some like Jana who would have didn't go through it at all. Jana did not go through the secondary school. She had her children. I know those kids, and she had them at home right up until she took them through high school, you know, and she took them through some of them through college, the first couple of years of college at home. So some people might not want to do that. But there are others who, Maglore, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name well, you had that opportunity of taking your child through to the common entrance center. Can you very quickly, can you tell us about that?
Okay, I'm a teacher by profession. And what I found was that in as much as my son attended the school where I taught, it was a private school, his marks were not up to par. And I would not have been allowed to teach him in his class 4 year, neither would, so basically I had to make a decision as it related to actually biting the bullet and leaving my job in order to provide my son with what he needed. And I did that. I homeschooled him for for his class 4 year. And like the presenters have said, it was an exercise in that he learned, yes, but I also learned a lot about myself. I also realized that our relationship bloomed in that we were with each other. I'm a single parent. We were with each other for all of that time. So you found that there were things about your child that you were discovering because you were spending every waking moment with your child. The question specifically was what happens with the 11 plus. What happens is that your child, after you've gone through the whole procedure with the Ministry of Education, and my son has just finished CXC, so this was a few years ago. At the time, you had the procedure was slightly different in that you had to apply to the ministry, but essentially your child would be registered as a private candidate. So based on the fact that I lived near the Queen's College, that was his examination center, the Queen's College. So he did that. But then one of the things that in terms of what your presenters were saying, one of the things that you need to look at, it depends on what your goals and your intentions are. I would have wanted to have continued homeschooling him throughout his secondary school education. But as I said, I'm a single parent. I did not have that luxury because one of the things that I found was that he had surpassed, when he got into first form, he was at the Combermere School. But what he found was that he was not being challenged because a lot of the information that what he was doing in first form was information to which he had already been exposed. Because I taught him French, I had the flexibility to actually do more with him than what he would have been exposed to during at school. So he did geography, he did French, he did his science. He was always a science buff. So basically he found that when he got into secondary school, he was not challenged. And outside of that, in terms of the environment, the last speaker spoke about the environment. He came home very traumatized because a teacher had used bad words to them. So for a whole week, he was traumatized because he had never known that adults would actually say bad words to children. So there are things to look at. And the other thing I wanted to speak about was somebody asked a question about time and time management. if and when you're homeschooling, you have the opportunity for you to create the curriculum that you want. You know what your child needs. My son was always a bright boy in school, quote unquote. However, I found he didn't know money. So if, for example, I had to run an errand, it was a teachable moment. So see me in the supermarket, I'm buying stuff. But then if, for example, we're looking at rates, okay, I need toilet paper. I need you to tell me which toilet paper I should buy. So you have a bale of toilet paper here for this amount of money. And then you have the individual roles for so-and-so calculated, and they will be walking around it, because I didn't have, he wasn't the only one, because when I left the school, one or two parents pulled their children in order for me to homeschool as well, because I would not have been there to teach class 4. So they'd be walking around the supermarket, and they would actually be with their little pen and paper calculating whatever. So basically it's a matter of you tailoring it, because one of the things that I'm finding, even though I in a way help to perpetuate the system, I understand that. But one of the things I can say quite honestly as an educator is that we are turning our children who are not functionally literate and numerate. So they have certification, yes, but they don't think logically. In a lot of instances, their command of the English language is not all that good. And outside of that, in terms of being logical, in terms of being able to function in society, we have an issue there. And I can't speak to what's happening in the other countries, but I can definitely say where St. Lucia is concerned, which is where I'm from. And from what I have seen here for the 10 years or so that I've been here, because I never went back into school. I have been homeschooling since. I've never actually gone back into a formal school setting. But there is a need for parents to look into it. And I'm very glad to hear about the fact that there is a homeschoolers association here in Bob. Well, there's a homeschooling group, but I think that there's a need for an association, a formal association to be formed. Because for me, as a single parent, I would have loved to have known that there were other people out there who would have been in a position to help you to navigate, or even then in terms of just being able to have your child hang out with children who are going through the same procedure. And I know that now with COVID, a lot more parents are looking into that option. And the challenge for a lot of parents is that there is a need, but then in a lot of instances, they're not able to afford the actual,
Right.
they're not able to afford to actually pay somebody or to pay a tutor to actually do it, but there is a need.
Right. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was very
You're
helpful,
welcome.
because you are a practitioner, you are involved, you are doing it. There was a question about criteria. How do you know if your child is at the standard that they're supposed to be at? And Rasimba said that the ministry is supposed to basically give you the criteria, right, Rasimba? And but they are not. You found that they have not been following it. I wanted to hear from Adrian Green again, if he's still here, if the ministry has been checking up. Have they been doing any evaluation for your children, Adrian?
They don't do it.
You're still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. No, they haven't done anything.
They haven't done any evaluation, but it is built in, as far as Rasimba is saying, it's built into the system of homeschooling in Barbados. It's just that they have not carried out their evaluation. Is that your understanding?
No.
I think the ministry is overburdened.
I'm speaking to Adrian. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, she may be better able to speak to it than I do, but as far as I can tell, the ministry has a lot of things to worry about with the traditional system, and to get around to doing that kind of thing may be difficult for them.
Okay, so you have not. I just wanted to know. And you were saying something, Maglore, about that?
The ministry right now is inundated with a lot of things. To correct Rasimba, right now in the years since during the past few years, they've actually put together a homeschooling department, a set of people whose responsibility it is to actually look into the whole homeschool process, whereby they look at the applications, etc. That has not been happening. I homeschooled a child whose mom pulled her from the convent last term. And to date, the mother the term began, the term ended. We're on to another school year. The mother has not yet been called into a meeting. in order for her to actually get permission to homeschool the child.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So they don't, they, I do not believe that they actually have the capacity for them to actually have parents go around to various homes to actually ensure that the curriculum that a parent says will be followed is being followed. They're not aware of what is being taught. They have not reached that place.
That places
And,
yet. Okay,
and
thank you.
hopefully, yeah, all right.
Thank you so much. Only because of time, we're moving along, but thank you so much. And stay right there, Maglore. We're going to call on you again because you are actually doing it and can answer some of the questions. Rasimba, I'm going to ask you to address, there's a question in the chat from Lee and Lee Carter, and she's asking about children who are have special needs. You know, what is there any, you know, what is in place for children that with special needs? And so I'm going to ask you to think about answering that. And I wanted to talk about curriculum, and I see there's a question about curriculum that I want to ask, and ask Lisa Gill, her husband is on, and to find out if the Minister of Education gives you a curriculum, and you know, how much leverage do you have to add to that curriculum? All right, I think that's an important question. So that question is for Mr. Gill, and Rasimba is going to answer the question about the special needs child. Over to you, Rasimba.
Give thanks, Marcia. In terms of special needs, there's really nothing in place for anything far less special needs. Anything that is there, it is what the parents create with the tutors that they can find. So as I said, within my case, because we're a community charity and we deal with the quote unquote ghettos and, you know, poor people and, you know, disadvantaged, marginalized people. That's why I said before, one parent came to me, you know, her son was seriously, you know, had serious learning challenges, you know, and I took up the challenge in terms of dealing with him because there was no place for her to go, you know, because she was at a school, and as I said before, she found that he wasn't being challenged. So even though he had his challenges, you know, they would treat him like if he couldn't do anything, and that was far from, you know. And he was actually a bright little boy, you know, in you know, in the context of that. But you know, as the sister just said, you know, that department would have had to be set up fairly recently, because when we were doing the case, we offered, because we did a lot of research into the different modes of homeschooling, the frameworks, you know. Listen to a man called John Holmes, you know, and if you're into homeschooling, you know, you should listen to John Holmes, you know, who is one of the founders of this, the homeschooling as we're speaking about it now. Yeah, so just in answering that, you know, there's nothing. The ministry, I've had a case where the parent had made the application, they've done the interview, you know, and was just waiting for the call to come and pick up the permission thing. And in that time waiting, the ministry sent their officer, you know, was what we used to call a truant officer in Trinidad. This officer that, you know, if you're sending your child to school, they would come to see what you were doing, you know. And, you know, it's like a case of the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. And I would beg to differ. I think that, you know, no, you know, and I'm talking about pre-COVID times, you know, and even then the ministry may have been burdened by just think that they weren't interested, you know, because as I said before, you know, the truth of the matter is homeschooling for a long time was done by one section of the society, you know, and, you know, under the colonial mindset that was spoken of, we believed that that society was capable, that portion of the society was capable of educating their children. You know, diplomats could educate their children, white people could educate their children. But when it came to Black people and poor Black people, you know, somehow we set off on this colonial boat, thinking that we couldn't do that, you know, and that was the mindset, and I believe it's still the mindset of the ministry, and some of the major players in the ministry based on my interactions. Remember, we went all the way to court with this, and that was the essence, and I think that is why the ministry is so ill prepared now, to deal with homeschooling. I've had arguments like, if the children stay home, they could be terrorists again. You don't know what they're teaching them, man, a whole sort of ignorance, came out. And that is, some of the foundation thinking of Adrian spoke about institution, stressing the word institution, you know, and within the homeschooling, it says that, we need to stop schooling our children and educate our children. And that is the difference. There's a big difference between schooling and education,
Okay.
right? So I can just stick my pin there.
Yes, I mean this is so exciting. Thank you so much, Rasimba. And your organization is African Heritage, right? And if you can put it in the
African
chat,
Heritage
because
Foundation. Okay, I'll put it in
what
chat.
African Heritage Foundation and what Simba has done is to create a community atmosphere at the African Heritage Foundation, where parents who have applied to, for their children to be homeschooled, if you need a community, you can connect with them because they're able to do that as well. And I want to also offer the services of Praise Academy of Dance to say, if you are, say, for example, you're teaching and like Adrian said, I didn't understand math and I couldn't do the math, or, it might be creative writing or whatever the case might be physics, whatever the case might be. I've had parents call Praise Academy for biology, things like that. We can supply you with tutors, okay? And we do it at a very, very nothing like talking about these kinds of ridiculous prices for tutoring, but we provide a tutoring for you as well. And depending on the number of parents, we can provide that community for you as well to support. And we, with the help of Rasimba, we'll be able to help with that kind of service as well. But Rasimba, the African Heritage Foundation, they have been doing it a long time. In Trinidad, there is Kwame Kamau. He's forming an association. So if you're on from Trinidad, you can reach him, and he's put his information in there. In Barbados, we have the African Heritage Foundation, and Praise Academy can help you with tutoring, right? We're providing you with tutors to help you in particular areas that you might have challenges in. Can I have Mr. Gill is going to talk to us about curriculum. Good night, sir. Great to have you. Your wife did a fantastic job in just speaking from her heart, and it was so engaging. And so you are going to talk to us about the curriculum. Are you following the curriculum from the Ministry of Education? You probably don't want to say that publicly. Or are you augmenting the curriculum?
Well, the curriculum is sort of flexible. You would have what you call core subjects, math, English, social studies, history. But for you as a parent, if you see it fit to you, as you assess your children as they're learning, you see them gravitating to one particular side. Like we said, one is more academically inclined and likes languages, then you could add probably Spanish or French for that one. And if you have another one who, tend to like more hands-on skills, you could then incorporate carpentry or, needlework, depending on boy, girl. As a parent, you could do that with the curriculum. Also, let me say, for instance, for me and my wife is a religious persuasion as well. So what we would incorporate is like church history, right? We would see it fit that we want our children to learn about Jesus Christ and about the Reformation and whatnot. And world history that would have affected Christians as well. So we can introduce that. We do actually introduce that. Things that you wouldn't normally find in the school, you can actually tailor as a parent into your curriculum. And as long as you have those core studies, you are good to go. Because when the evaluation comes, most of it for younger children that haven't set the common entrance, they only focus mostly on math, English, and basically the essay, which is still English. So for younger children, it is a lot more lenient or a lot more flexible. And as I said, like the tailoring not only goes to the academic side, but it also goes to the characteristic side. And I actually like that. You could actually introduce, like, if you want your child to be a public speaker, you could introduce something that would speak to that. If you want your child to be a business child, if you see them gravitating towards that, he look like a little CEO up and coming, you could tailor to that. So it's not, these homeschooling provides the ability to tailor your curriculum according to your child's personality, right? So if you're a parent and you're paying attention to your children and you see what they're gravitating towards, you could then tailor the curriculum to suit their personality, to suit the things that they are going to. And I believe that's one of the growing concerns of the school system. There is this one size fit all. You have these tests and everybody basically set these tests, and the ones that pass them, or they're shining stars, the ones that fail them, they're dunces. But in reality, you might have people that are more practical. They're not academically inclined, they're more practical. So why would you judge a person who's better at skill with the same metric with a person who's better at academics? We know there's a serious imbalance, but with homeschooling, as you observe, you realize, well, this child is more practical. Let me introduce more practical things in their curriculum, right? You still keep the course, but you introduce that stuff. And for the other one that, academically inclined and advancing in that area, you then give them the academics, right? So in that regard, what happens is that both of them end up, as Rasimba was saying earlier, doing what they like. So it doesn't really seem like work, right? They enjoy it, right? And as Adrian was saying, and my wife was saying earlier, it's a 24-hour situation. So as the academically inclined one grows, as even as young as they are, you might hear them start to say, it got really, really big. And you could tell them, oh, you mean it's expanding, and you explain it and thing, and that could be 12 in the night. You helping them to build a vocabulary and whatnot, because they are comfortable learning from you. And there's this bond, this parent-child bond, where the child is sort of looking at, as a mentor, as a friend, as mommy, the teacher. So they actually like to hear from you as well, right? So you get to actually command the respect and attention of your child, rather where you got children who are distracted in a more traditional school setting. They tend to.
So thank you so much, and I love the fact that you're saying the curriculum, it's you have the core subjects, but you can always augment it, and that's what I've been hearing from all the different presenters, that they can teach their children other things. And there's one quote, coming from Adrian Green, Mr. Gill, and he says, homeschooling is parenting. And that's really what it's all about. We're just continuing the teaching to teach our children. Are there any other questions? I'm looking through, and I think we've answered most of the questions all of the questions that are there. As I said, if you need tutors, you can reach out to African Heritage Foundation. You can also reach out to us at Praise Academy. And our number is in the chat. And I think African Heritage number is there, 268-7084 Rasimba. And they've been doing it for years. We have been doing lessons online. We've been doing a lot of the work online with students, Praise Academy, and have been working in the area of education for a number of years with great results. So both right up to the secondary level. So if you need that kind of tutoring and assistance, where it's your homeschooling, but if you need a little help, as Rasimba and everybody's been saying, you can reach out to Praise Academy 236-7000 or to African Heritage Foundation in Barbados 268-7084, and Reverend Kwame Kamo in Trinidad you can reach out to him in Trinidad, and he has this information that is in the chat as well, which I'm trying to look for, but I know it's right here, right? It's right here, and his number is here, email address is here for Reverend Kwame Kamau, and he would be able to help you in terms of finding, you know, the resources that you need to help you on your journey. And if we have no other questions, I'm going to ask Reverend Kwame. Yes, go ahead.
Marcia, one final thing that just came to my mind, you know, for parents, you know, in terms of the curriculum. My mom, as I said, you know, a teacher forever, you know, from school to the jail. You know, she taught me, you know, when you can build your own curricula, you know, you can go into a bookstore. This is for the parents. You go into a bookstore, whatever level, class level your child is at, and you know the book, if it's a Form 2 book on biology, and you look at the contents of the book, you can form your curricula off of the contents of that book, because that book is going to be guiding you according to the school system, you know, on the information that your child is supposed to need, you know. So that is a simple way of building your base curricula. You know, as I said, we provide curricula for parents that are applying, like we did it for Lisa and her husband, you know, but it is so base, you know, it leaves a lot of room, as your brother was saying, to expand based on what your family requires, whether it's a religious requirement or whatever, you know. And then within the actual subject matter, what you teach, how you teach it, is really up to your imagination and your creativity. You know, if you want to, you know, teach simple addition, you know, by using whatever, you know. And I just wanted to leave with saying that whatever you do within homeschool is not for everyone, you know, as we would have heard, but make it fun. If you can make your education fun for your child, you know, that, you know, he or she will accomplish great things, you know, whatever they want to do, you know, because they will approach everything with that freeness of mind and approach everything with a ease. Nothing becomes, you know, and try to encourage your children, you know, my very last point, to take, especially the younger ones, take the word can't out of the vocabulary and the school environment. Make mistakes something that is fun, something that we build on. You know, encourage cooperation and not competition. You know, it is about substance over fluff. I'll end there.
Excellent, excellent. Simba, it's always a pleasure having you. I'm going to ask Reverend Kamau to give us some final thoughts there before we close, and then I'm going to go on to. Jana has dropped off. I think there's something wrong with her internet, and so she's not able to come back on, and so she's messaged me. Apologies for that. And Adrian has another engagement, but I have we've grafted in Maglior, and so I'm going to have her say a few words before we close. Okay, so can we have Reverend Kamau, please?
Sure, Sister Marcia, and again, thank you for the opportunity. So much that was said that is so profound. I would want to add the following. With regards to homeschooling, please note, and this is a very important point that we must drive home on tonight, and that has to do with the fact that quality beats quantity every day and twice on Sundays. So I'll say that again, quality beats quantity every day and twice on Sundays. Your homeschool day does not have to be 6, 7, 8 hours. In some instances, you can allow for a 3-4 hour day of concentrated and focused to work wonders. Outpacing, of course, the system and, you know, their approach to it. So that's a very important point. Quality is to be desired over quantity. Second point I would want to make on this evening in just closing remarks has to do with the fact that with respect to the homeschooling option, there are what we would call push factors and pull factors. For those of us who are passionate about health sovereignty, for those of us who would like to avoid certain forms of medication and certain forms of now mandatory medical treatments. Certainly, homeschooling provides a safe port of call for us. As a Hebrew Israelite, as a Pan-Africanist, by extension, there are certain things to be found within the medical protocol that is required for entry into the school system that I find not only by way of facts and evidence deleterious to health, but it goes against as well my spiritual code. And so I would not be able with good and in good conscience to participate in those types of things. And so homeschooling provides a wonderful safe harbor with respect to that. We heard people talking about, of course, the environment that you get to set and the stage that you get to set for the learning experience. I want to underscore and support all that was said on tonight, and simply to add this, there is an exploration that has to take place. Sometimes when you're working with your child or children, you will not know what their genius is or where their genius lies unless and until you explore a variety of things. For some, as I said before, it may be language. For some, it may be science. For some, it may be sport. For some, it may be agriculture. For some, it may be an instrument or some other form of musicology. For some, it may be spirituality. And so when you have such a diverse menu of choices, you would really be able to tap into the deep vistas of your child and to really identify what they were born for, what were they sent on this earth to accomplish, and certainly to partner with them in seeing that they are able to achieve that. Of course, one of the last points I would like to make here on tonight is that of the whole notion of unschooling. So we've heard about homeschooling, and of course we've heard about, we know about the schooling within the traditional context, but there is of course an unschooling methodology that is being engaged now within the developed world, where we are saying that we need really to pay very close attention to the personality and to the vibes and the energy and the aura and of course the needs, the special needs of our children, and really to design something that suits them. We've heard it tonight, one size certainly does not fit all. And so in unschooling, while curricula and certainly syllabi are in general good, within the unschooling philosophy, we are not looking at subjects and having our children be good at or master subjects. What we want to do is to have them self-actualize and master self, wherever that leads. And so for one, it may lead to art, and for the other, it may lead to a career or a call in the area of spirituality. And we know that Europe is going in that direction, because they are talking about in the North abandoning these pursuits of subjects, and they are instead training and tutoring along the pathway of careers, career enhancement, career development, career focus from very young. And when you do that, you give them a head start. When I spoke about the young chap at the age of 16 having his commercial pilot license, well, today, now some 8 years later, he has returned to the homeschooling environment of which his mother is a champion, and he is now teaching aviation as a course. So your child and my child can learn aviation through a student and a beneficiary of homeschooling, something that they could not, again, think about within that traditional setting and forum.
Right.
So again, with those few words, You have the points of contact. Again, you have the Homeschoolers Association of Trinidad and Tobago that already exists. That is a generic platform that's for everyone. You can certainly turn to that. The Afrocentric is for those of us who are more Pan-African in nature and who really want to engage our children with that kind of specialist and specialty type of knowledge information. And again, we are partnering with our international Pan-African stakeholders. So we would have tutors from Nigeria and tutors from Ghana and tutors from the US of A and tutors from all across the Caribbean on one platform. Again, because it's a family journey, we can do that together. So again, thank you so much, Sister Marcia, and to all the panelists. Love you guys, and keep on keeping on, and do what you're doing, of course, with respect to your homeschooling journey. Shalom.
Awesome, awesome. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, Reverend Cole. And again, his contact is there, and I love what you're doing. My husband, Dave Weeks, has in the chat here, and that goes so much in, with what you are saying. He's encouraging homeschools to look into teaching or retraining our youngsters on the great things of Africa, the inventions, the mother of creation, the work of Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, the riches of Africa. In other words, Afrocentricity, okay? And so it is very important what you have established, and we want people to reach out to you as well. And of course, the African heritage here in Barbados, which most of the people on there are in Barbados, we don't start school until the 20th. So this information that we have here, Rasimba has informed me that it's important that this week, right, Rasimba, is important. If you are done to wait till you've started the term. It's better to apply before the term has started. So this is an important week, which is why I keep putting up the information. Hopefully you're able to see it, and would be able to call the number 535-0760, or go up there and have a talk with them and get the forms and fill out the forms. Reach out to Rasimba if you need help. Rasimba, I'm sending people your way, but that's what you have been doing, and I've been doing a fantastic job of it. Okay, so reach out to Rasimba to help you with the requirements, how you fill out the forms, etc. Very important. Remember, in terms of curriculum, that they provide the curriculum, the core subjects, as Mr. Gill so ably explained, but then we can take that and you can add to it, which is the beauty of it. So you can move your children further along. Okay, I'm going to ask Maglore to say a few words. Just take a couple minutes, 2 minutes. Maglore, I don't know your first name. Can you open your camera and your microphone? Are you still there? Thank you so much. You can go right ahead, Maglore.
What can I say? Just to I support everything that I've heard, and as I said, I am a product of the system. I have been perpetuating the system, but at some point if you're honest, you look at, I'm one of these people that can honestly look at the system and say, okay, in as much as this is what we're called to do, these are the shortcomings, these are the failings. And homeschooling does have its place, but it is not for everybody, because some parents, depending on the expectations of their children, may end up doing more harm than good. And sometimes you definitely do need to outsource. You do need to outsource that kind of service to somebody else who is a little more competent. You do have the opportunity, if you do decide to homeschool and you do think that you actually have the love and the patience, you do have the opportunity to help your child reach his or her potential by actually helping him or her to learn at his or her own pace. You are able to, more than anything, tailor whatever it is, tailor whatever curriculum you are following in order to look at the learning style, because children have different learning styles, and that is important. One of the things that a school setting does not always do is actually tailor the information to the needs of the child. And I think that that is a great shortcoming. But now that it is actually something that is being more widely looked at, it is something that parents ought to look into, because one thing that I can certainly tell you is that within the last year or two, a lot of children have been disadvantaged. A lot of children have been disadvantaged. The ministry has not done what they said that they were going to do in terms of the remediation that was necessary. And in as much as I do understand the whole Afrocentric move, the whole point is that when all is said and done, the children still need to be literate and numerate. And if things continue the way that they do, because we're not sure what this whole COVID environment is going to bring, but we do know that children are being disadvantaged, they're being kept at home, and they're having to interact with a screen, which is not healthy on a number of levels. So it is something for parents to look into, and those persons who do actually decide to do it, and those of, and I realize that you guys are doing it, I wish you every success, but I wish you every success, and I do hope that parents do avail themselves of the opportunities that are available as it relates to taking this opportunity to bond with your child and to help him or her reach his or her full potential. Because when you do outsource these kinds of services to big institutions, you do lose, there's a loss.
Correct.
There is a loss, whether it is spiritual, because I have my issues with whether it's spiritual, whether it's health, whether it's education, even in terms of your food. You're not sure what did you buy from the supermarket, but that's for another show.
Yes, another show. But thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for sharing. And such a wealth of information on here tonight. And again, as she said, Maglore said, which is so important right now, the option that's available to our children is online. And so this is a great time that parents can transition. Parents, try it out, transition for this term. You still have a week to go ahead, fill out the forms, and you get the curriculum, and you already have the list, the book lists, and start something at home with your children. Remove them from in front of that computer all that time. This is an opportunity to make that change. Others have done it, and the children are doing very, very well. Okay. Thank you all for coming on. I want to thank Mr. Gill, Lisa Gill, and Reverend Kamo, and Rasimba, and Jana O'Donnell, who could not stay on without Adrian Green, Miss Magliore, which we just kind of adopted. It's all community. It's just like homeschooling, right? And we all come together and we work together. Thank you all for being on tonight. Someone is asking, how can I get this recording? You will be able to get it from our YouTube page. That's the Marcia Week Show YouTube page or YouTube channel. The Marcia Week Show YouTube channel. We're going to, by tomorrow evening, we should be able to have this up for you so that you are able to share it with your friends and family, and, spread the word that this is a good time to remove the children from in front of that computer and have some one-on-one with them. As Adrian Green says, homeschooling is parenting. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. And God bless you. Thank you all so very much. God bless. Bye-bye.